pretty much we've been doing, I guess some people call it inReach, when we were talking about how to approach some of the work that we're doing this year. And we have a lot of folks who've tried to make things better for the club itself. And somehow during this year, we have increased tremendously in membership. Jim sends us updates on that, and Michael is keeping track of membership and meeting people who join the club and trying to develop their interests and figure out what the club can do for them. So we really appreciate that. So I'm going to move into awards. We have, it looked like 19 people on the phone, or on the call, excuse me. So we'll do the awards, and then after that we'll go into elections. We'll probably have a few more people on by then. We give 4 awards historically each year, and this year the board talked about how to approach this. We made the decision collectively as a board based on the nominations that people made. Bruce did a survey that folks used to make nominations and give the reasons for those nominations. Then the board considered those and made decisions about how to award those. So one thing that we decided to do was, on the student award, we usually award a student who has really gotten in and become active in the club or done some outstanding things. And last year we had Dino Fanagrossi, who helped out tremendously, and I believe he was the winner last year of that award. But we haven't had a lot of student activity this year, so we decided not to give that award. We then had to consider what to do about the Outreach Award. That's usually given for the work that we do at Pinnacle Mountain and Woolly Hollow, and then special events like International Observe the Moon Night, which we couldn't have this year. And we mainly, as I mentioned, dealt internally with the club, doing things like these meetings on Zoom and then some special meetings on Zoom. So we decided that this year that outreach is just not an area where we should give an award because of the lack of public events that we would have had. So that takes us to Observer of the Year. We had some good nominations here. We've had folks who've remained active observing this season, and we came up with some ways to use the observatory safely. Usually it's just fine because people just kind of mind their own business at their telescope or binoculars, or sit in a lawn chair and watch the sky. So we made sure we came up with some safe guidelines for that enabled folks to keep using the observatory. We've even had a few group events out where a handful of people will come out and enjoy the grounds. But the observer who we decided to give the award to, somebody who I believe is observing tonight. I can't tell from the Zoom background, but this person has used the observatory quite frequently this year. And observing doesn't necessarily mean at RRO, but that's where he does a lot of this, and has showed us the fruits of that observing in the form of photography that's been done this year. We decided to give the award to Jim Dixon, our treasurer, who I think we'll all agree has been really good at helping us see what he sees when he goes out and takes those photographs at the observatory and other places. And I've really appreciated it and enjoyed all of these reports that he sends us. So Jim, congratulations. We've awarded you Observer of the Year. We would give you a memento of that in person, but we'll do that later. So the next award is for club service. And this is an area where we have a whole lot of people who do a lot for the club, and we really benefit from that because folks take care of the grounds at the observatory, the equipment at the observatory. They take care of the money. They take care of the members, the membership records. And folks like Bruce McMath remind us to do things that we have to do throughout the year, and that's very helpful. we have folks, you'll never know how much work they put in behind the scenes. And we hope that this award, as we give this out every year, it should go to about a dozen people, but we have to pick one. And this year, the awardee is somebody who has worked, again, I mentioned how odd this year has been, and we've had a very good, I think, set of people who've stepped up to present at these meetings. But that doesn't just happen automatically. Somebody has to go out and ask them to present and then kind of help make sure that things are in order and get them comfortable to make presentations. And this year it's been these Zoom presentations. And also this person has done other things too. I mentioned work at RRO. They've gone up and done a lot of work on the buildings and done some maintenance on the buildings lately that we'll all appreciate when we go up and use a tidier, nicer looking area to observe. So our winner this year is Catherine Norwood, and we really appreciate Catherine's work and all the work that she's put in. And I know that from my standpoint, these meetings have come together really well because she's recruited us some outstanding presenters. One thing that stands out is that not all the presenters have been from our area in Central Arkansas. They've been from, in some cases, around the country. So that's been really great. And we congratulate Catherine on this year's Club Service Award. Thank you very much for your work. And thank you to everybody else who does all the work to keep this club going and managing all the things that go into it. I think we all appreciate that. So now we have elections. Every year we have a nominating committee meet, and that is the immediate past president, the vice president, and the president. We go through and figure out who we think will kind of give us a good mix of members to help marshal the club along, to make decisions, to vote on various things that we have to do occasionally, and make a lot of decisions, like financial decisions as well. So this year, I've sent out the report of the nominating committee, but that doesn't mean that these are the only people who can be considered for election. The voting is by club membership, so anybody who's a member of the club and on this call will be eligible to vote on these various offices. And what I will do now is just read you the nominating committee report, and then I'll ask for nominations after that, if there are any. For president, we've nominated, and this is usually how it happens, we usually nominate the vice president to be president if they're willing to serve in that position. Our nominee is Daryl Heath. For vice presidents, Chris Togni, who's on our call tonight, and he's a fairly new member to the club and has gotten involved and has helped out with all kinds of outreach work and other work that we've done, and we've nominated him for vice president. For secretary, we've renominated Bruce McMath, and he hasn't said that he wouldn't do it, so we're happy to have him, if he'll do it, to continue as secretary. And then the nominee for treasurer is Jim Dixon, who does an outstanding job. The board this year will have two new positions on it that over the last couple of years, we've thought we need to make the board a little bit larger so that we could get more people involved in leadership in the club. But for the current board members, we decided to renominate the folks who are currently on the board right now, and I'll get to the additional members in just a second. But we've nominated Danny Flippo, Carl Frialnoven, Jay Gross, and Chris Lasley to remain on the board. And then the two newer folks who we'd like to add to the board are Michael Borelli and Kenneth McLeod, so that we can, Michael has been, of course, the membership chair this year and really dug in, and we'd like to add him to the board. And then Kenneth is I keep saying new member, but we have people who are like really, really new members and folks who've been members for a few years or a couple of years, and it still seems like they're new members. But Kenneth has gotten really, really involved and has done a lot of observing and done a lot of the stuff that we've done for newer members to get them involved in observing as well. So those are the nominees, and I will entertain a motion for any other nominees for any of those positions, if there are any. So.
And the mics have been open, so
There you go.
Unmute themselves and make any nominations.
All right. And if you think we can't hear you, just put it in the chat box and maybe we'll notice there as well. All right, I don't hear any other nominations or see any hand waving or anything like that from anybody, so. All right. Do I hear a motion that nominations cease?
I move that nominations cease.
Is there a second?
Just second that.
All right. All those in favor of ceasing the nominations, please say aye.
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 All right. Well, the slate of officers recommended by the nominating committee is before you, and I'll just throw that out for a vote since it's a report of a committee. And all those in favor of the slate as presented, please say aye.
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 All right. Congratulations. Congratulations to me too, because I just moved to immediate past present.
Is that good or bad?
That's good. That's good.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. And we really, really appreciate everybody's work in the club and what you do, even if you're not in an elected position or an appointed position within the club. So instead of the potluck that we usually have, we do have a couple of presentations tonight that Catherine lined up. And the first one is Rocky Togni is going to tell us. A few years ago, he did this in person, and it was really nice. I was watching, we watched a little bit of Ben-Hur. It's like a 4 or 10 hour movie. But at the very beginning of Ben-Hur, you see this little star float around. And it reminded me of Rocky's presentation, because he makes a presentation about what in the world was the Christmas star. It could have been many different phenomena. And in that movie, it was a little cartoon star that moved around the sky. So I'm going to turn it over to Rocky for a presentation on the Christmas star. Thank you, Rocky.
Sure. Okay, the Christmas star, of course, you hear about it in the Bible from the wise men. I think I've got the quote right here. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." And that's in Matthew 2, 1 through 2. The Magi were from Persia, or Iran now, and it's thought they were Chaldeans from Persia, and they studied astrology and their predecessors had studied under Daniel and basically knew the Bible. So they feel like they also knew about the Bible and knew about the prophecies in the Bible. And since they studied astrology, they were looking at planets and stuff all the time and looking for conjunctions and things. So there's been a lot of different things that they think the Star of Bethlehem could have been. Well, first, of course, Jesus was, we celebrate Christmas on December 25th. And so a big question is, when was Jesus born? And Luke actually talks about the shepherds being in the fields, and the shepherds would have been in the fields during the summertime. And so they think Jesus was born sometime in the summertime instead of the winter. Matthew also, when the wise men arrived, Matthew also calls Jesus a child rather than a babe. So they think that, they had a sign to tell them to go there before, and then they took some time to get there. It actually takes about 60 days by caravan. It's about 500 miles from I guess Baghdad or somewhere around there to Israel. Before, but the reason it's on December 25th is interesting too. The early Christians didn't celebrate Jesus Christ, Jesus's birth. They and about the reign of Aurelian, about 270 AD, they started celebrating it along with pagan festivals, which occurred in late December. So, and the reason they did that was because they could hide their celebration. They could, just pretend they were celebrating it like everybody else. Then when Constantine came in, they were able to start celebrating about 336 AD. They were able to start celebrating it on December 25th. So one of the things I think it could have been, and Kepler was one of the people that advanced this theory, was a supernova. There's no evidence of a supernova about that time. There was a nova in Aquila about 7 BC or something like that, but I don't think it was like a supernova. And the Chinese have no record of any kind of nova during that time. So they don't think it was a supernova for that reason. This is a painting by an Italian painter in the 1300s of the manger with a comet in the background, and that was about the time Halley's Comet came through in 1301. So he painted it with a comet. He felt like it was a comet that was actually the Christmas star. And there was a comet around 5 BC that they think could have been it. But one thing kind of keeps, Herod in Matthew 2:7, then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And if it had been a nova or a bright comet, Herod surely would have had his astrologers tell him about it. So they think it was more likely a conjunction. And there was a amazing string of conjunctions. Starting about 7 BC, there was a conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, like we have 3 times. Saturn went by Jupiter 3 times, or I think Jupiter went by Saturn 3 times in 7 BC. And then that could have, made them start looking, thinking there must be something going on. And actually, Saturn passes Jupiter about every 20 years, and you've probably seen that because we're getting ready to have a conjunction ourselves of Jupiter and Saturn. But then a few years later, about 5 years later, there was a triple conjunction of Jupiter and Regulus in Leo. Jupiter is known to the Hebrews as Sedek, and is it means righteousness. Jupiter is also viewed as being the king of the planets. Regulus is Latin for prince or little king. And then Venus is often shown as a symbol of love, fertility, and birth. Combination of close objects may have led them to interpretation that a king was born. And then the last, and this is, and you can see the sequence here. The triple conjunction of Jupiter and Regulus in September of 2000 minus 02 is 0 days. The next contact was 3 months, 20 days. So all this happened in a year and 2 months, or something like that. And then after the third contact, there was a close conjunction of Venus and Jupiter. And I've got a picture of that like you'd see it through a telescope here in a minute. So they a very close conjunction, and a conjunction of Venus and Jupiter would be even more spectacular, as you can imagine, than the one we're getting ready to see in a few days. And the way you have a triple conjunction, and a lot of you know this, but maybe not all of you, is by retrograde motion. And you can see it in the left hand GIF, how as the Earth goes around the sun, and this is a triple conjunction of Mars. It catches up with Mars, and as it catches up, Mars starts going backwards. And then as it goes on around, Mars starts going forward again. And so on the right, you can see, and this is I think it's Mars. I don't remember now. Yeah, it's Mars. Going through Aquarius, and you can see tall to Aquarius, how it goes around it actually and passes it 3 times. So that's what happened to Regulus in 6 BC. And this is Jupiter and Venus in 1 BC in the conjunction, and you can't see them separated because they're together right here. And Stellarium only shows you, doesn't show the name very well. But here you can see how close Regulus was. And so this is after one of those, after the triple conjunction. And this is in the evening sky to the west. And that's another thing. The wise men, the Bible talks about a star in the east, but the wise men had to go 500 miles west. Now, this had been in the west, but anyway, I'm sure that it's not all. There's a lot of theories about this, and you can spend a lot of time just looking at the theories and presentations on the Christmas star. But here's Regulus right below it, and that's 1 BC. And here's our conjunction. We're not going to have a triple conjunction, but we are going to have a conjunction in a week, 9 days from now, of Jupiter and Saturn, and it'll be the closest in 4 centuries, about 0.1 degree apart, and it'll be in the twilight on December 21st. But you need to be out there before dark, getting set up to see it, because it'll be pretty low in the southwest. And here's Stellarium's got a nice feature that shows you different eyepieces. And this is a telescope with, this is a, let me think, 120 millimeter f5 telescope with a 30 millimeter lens. So this is only 20 power, but I did that so you could see, this is the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in 6 BC. And this is the one. This is ours now, so it's quite a bit closer now. So anyway, I hope everybody gets to see that. Another thing I wanted to just mention is Jim may be up. Well, I don't know. The Gemini meteor shower. Hopefully, it'll clear up Sunday night. Right now, it doesn't look very good. But anyway, that's all I had.
Well, thank you very much for that. These planetarium programs are amazing because you can run them back and forth. Do you have any idea how they deal with calendar changes when you get that far back? Because
Stellarium has a zero year, And so
Okay.
stellarium's about probably a year off, but I didn't worry too much about that. I just kind of rolled it back and found where it was in the right place in the sky and everything. But there's, you've gone through if you go through the calendar, there's been several times they've modified the calendar between then and now. The Julian calendar is Julius Caesar actually started it. And I know one time about the, I don't know, 16 or 1700s, they dropped 13 days off the calendar. So it is it's kind of complicated, but stellarium has a 0 year, and actual calculations does not have a 0 year. The actual calendar does not have a 0 year, the way I understand it. So that makes if you get into BC with stellarium, you're about one year off.
Well, we really appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Rocky. Don Walters is going to talk to us a little bit about astrophotography tonight. So I'm going to ask Don we'll switch over to his view and have at it, Don. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So Jim Dixon actually suggested that I do this. He was curious about how to combat light pollution when doing photography. And the best weapon I know of is a good filter. So I thought I might do something about filters tonight, kind of talk about how to go about choosing one, because it is really confusing out in the market for these things. It's hard to know what to get sometimes, because they really, there's a lot of information they're giving you, and sometimes they don't give you quite enough. And so I'm going to talk about how to solve some of those problems. So the first thing you have to know is the top bar here represents the total electromagnetic spectrum. So you have way over here on the right, you have longer focal wavelengths, where you have infrared, microwaves, radar, and so on. And then of course over here on the left, you have gamma, X-rays, and so forth. But the only stuff that we actually see is this visible spectrum here at the bottom. And that goes between 400 and 700 nanometers. So this is where we care to capture the most, because the visible spectrum is going to look more like the object that we would see in the telescope, or as close as what we could expect to see in the telescope if we could see better, if our eyes were a little better, I guess. But so the visible spectrum is only in here, and the filters, before I get to that, the filters that they offer, they are really confusing, because they give you such crazy names like ultra high contrast and light pollution suppressor and city light suppression and nebula filter. All of these, none of these matter. And a lot of people get confused by it because, oh, this thing is a nebula filter. Well, it just kind of describes the function of the filter. But what really matters is the transmission curves. And this is showing you can see down here at the bottom, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but around the 400 down here at the lower left is the beginning of the visible spectrum. And then here, of course, we have the 700 about 3/4 of the way down the graph on this side. So the other axis, the vertical axis here, is showing us the transmission, like how much of that light is allowing to be passed. So in this particular filter, this is the IDAS LPS-D2. And here we go with the name game, LPS-D2, light pollution suppressor. So this is what's referred to as a broadband filter, and it's notched. So there's spikes where the light is allowed to pass. So you can see some of these up here that's between 90 and 100% transmission, that light is all getting through. Whereas way over here on the right, you can see this line gets flat and it goes down to 0 transmission. So we're not getting any of the higher light that we don't care to see. So you kind of have to get used to looking at these curves to see where the interesting things are being blocked. So this is the same filter, same curve, but here we're showing high pressure sodium lights and their impact. And you can see there's a really tall spike right here around the 500 mark. And that's really a problem. And that's one of the reasons why I might not choose this filter, because that really hurts. But the rest of this over here around the 550 to 650, that's all nicely blocked because the filter is only transmitting 0 or very little percent of that area, whereas the high pressure sodium lives in this neighborhood. So that's kind of what this filter is meaning to do, is to block all that nasty high pressure sodium. When you think high pressure sodium, these are things like on the interstate, when you're driving on the interstate, and it's the bright orange lights that, I mean, they're almost like white orange. And these things are just the nastiest. Compare that with this, where you only see low pressure sodium only spikes in one area. So this, if more people would go to low pressure sodium, we would have a much easier time blocking this stuff because the high pressure is such a wider range. So this particular filter blocks it very nicely. So you would not have to worry about low pressure sodium. So if you were in a subdivision, you had low pressure sodium lights, this worked really nice for you. Here we have mercury vapor with the green lines. So here we have another problem. There's a very tall green spike here right up in the part of the filter that's being transmitted through, and I don't like that. And there's another one here around the 550 again. So that's kind of not so great either, but all things considered, still not a bad filter because we're still blocking out so much of this over here on the far left. This particular filter that we've been talking about, the D2, it's really popular because it's the first of its kind that I'm aware of that makes an effort to block white LED. And you can see the white LED really spikes over here at the left, and that's actually at 460 nanometers is where it really spikes. And so this filter has effectively notched the visible light that's coming through here to prevent the white LED spike from getting through. So you can see over here as we get further to the right, it doesn't do as good of a job because there's quite a bit here that's still getting through. You see this is at 40% transmission, so 40 to 50% of the light is still getting through right through here. And so not so great there, but it does a great job of blocking all this out, of course. And then down here, I'm not as concerned. We're talking 20%, 10% transmission in this spike. It's fine. So this is a great filter. A lot of people are getting it because of this reason, because it actually does such a good job, but there's many others. Here we have the curve again, same, we're talking about the D2, but I want to start comparing this to some others. So this is the D1, and I actually own this filter, and I've used it for many years. And even though you can see here, there's two large spikes right in that area that we were trying to block out, but even with these spikes here, allowing this light, extra light to come through, I still had a great experience with this filter. It allowed me to double my exposure times, which allowed me to catch so much more light. I mean, I could get so much more signal from the target. So even though this filter is not as good as the D2, it still does really, really well. And the D2 is a recent filter. It's come out recently. The D1 is a little bit older. I got it probably 4 years ago. This one is the P2, and you can see it's pretty much similar. I mean, it's not that different. The spikes are a little different. Here's the D1, and then here's the D2. So, I mean, they're not, when I flip back and forth between them, they're not that different really, but they make improvements where they think, they increase some of the transmission over here where they think it's better, as the filter has evolved. This is a really bizarre filter, but the reason I wanted to bring it to your attention is, I mean, it's not really so bizarre in that it just has this one spike here, and I don't know why they included it, but this is an NGS1. It's a night glow suppression. Again, don't worry about the names. The curve is the only thing that matters. Once you start interpreting these curves and understanding the light that's getting through them, the names don't matter anymore. But again, here we see there's a tall spike around the 460 where they're making an effort to block the white LED, but they don't do as good of a job because the allowed light coming through here is so big, or so tight rather. I mean, if it were a little bit of bigger gap, that would be nicer. So it doesn't do as well as that other filter does. But you've got all the crazy colors in here representing the high pressure sodium and the all the other transmission that we're trying to avoid. But this one sells for $189. I saw it for on OPT. It was interesting. I mean, I would expect it to do about as well as the D1 or D2. So then we get into narrowband filters. If you guys have any questions, please stop me, because that kind of covers us for broadband filters. But the idea of a broadband filter is you're using one filter to block everything. So, it's got different areas that are being allowed through. The difference in a narrowband filter is you're using one filter. So like this green one for 03, that's one filter, and that's all he's allowing through is just that spike. So in this case, this is actually a 3 filter set, and these are sold by ZWO. And so, in this case, I bought 3 different filters, whereas the other is, like I said, it's a broadband filter. So it's allowing these channels to get through, you see? So here we are at the 500 mark where 03 lives, but also a lot of other light pollution. So 03 is very susceptible, or this area, the 500 area, is very desirable, but yet susceptible to light pollution. Whereas the hydrogen alpha and the S2, sulfur 2, those are much better, more resilient to light pollution, because as we saw in the earlier graphs, the light pollution kind of lives out here in the middle and towards this left end. So with these channels being where they are, it allows us to get some good signal from our target and not pick up all the garbage. So this is my solution. I've been able to get some great results with narrowband filters because I'm blocking out so much erroneous light that I don't care about. But this particular 3 filter set sells for $370 at OpCorp. I think it's a wonderful set because it's 7 nanometers. 7 nanometers is a little wide. I actually own a 3 nanometer set, and I got those from Astrodon, and they're a little pricey. But the difference is, as you go up in nanometers, like to a 7 or a 9, the price takes a fall. I mean, it really comes down quickly. So if you're interested in saving money, that's a way to do it, is get a wider pass. So the narrowbands are a great way to improve contrast. I mean, it allows you to expose longer. But of course, your equipment is going to have to be able to keep up with that. If you have a mount that is not able to go with longer exposures, you may have to get into guiding if your mount can do that, so that you can take a longer and longer exposure. Because the more light you're filtering out, the longer of an exposure you need to be able to capture enough signal to have a nice picture. So the next thing we should talk about is duoband filters, and these are really hot. This is what all the kids are using these days. Everybody loves these things, and the reason is because you're using one filter, but you're allowing 2 channels to come through. So it's kind of like the broadband filter, but you can see that the spikes are so clean and simple. They're very much like the narrowband filters that we saw here, where the spikes are very simple. They're not like a broadband filter where you have many spikes and they're bizarrely shaped. These are very simple and clean, and so it's blocking out a great deal of light with just one filter. So here we are at the 500, and this is 670, 650, whatever it is for H alpha. So this light is allowing to be coming through. These are O3 and HA areas, so they're very popular because they have so much good, rich data coming in. This filter, the Optilong L Enhance, you can see it pretty much does the same thing. But yet, if you look at the prices, ZWO sells a set for $80, whereas OpCorp has this for $180. So automatically you can save yourself $100 right there. And of course, if you're using a ZWO camera, you should definitely be using the ZWO filters because they are testing more with their own stuff. So, you know, they're not going to test their ZWO cameras with a lot of wide different manufacturer brand filters. They're going to do a lot more testing with their own. They're going to get a lot more customer feedback for their own. So I would really jump on this. These are also good for visual. I mean, a lot of these filters are. Some of them are not going to be so great because the blockage is going to be so much. You're going to be blocking so much light with a dual band filter like this that it's going to distort the colors, I think, a little. I can't speak to it very much myself because I don't do that. I'm really more photographically knowledgeable. I don't really do a lot of visual stuff with my filters. But, you know, I hear people say that it works just fine. This is another example, and this is my final slide, for a duo band filter. This one is sold by Astronomic. And the reason this one is interesting and I wanted to call it to your attention is because over here on the right, you can see that they make no effort to block the higher end. You know, the spike does not come back down and go to zero transmission like we're used to. So this is kind of something you might want to watch out for. It's a potential gotcha. This UHC means ultra high contrast, again, means nothing. But down here, they give a little more information, which was really useful. And they say that for CCD photography, that the filter is good when used with an IR block filter. And so it makes perfect sense when you think of it, because the CCD, when they say that, they're really referring to a monochrome sensor for your camera chip. So it's a bare chip, it's exposed, you know, to the entire spectrum. So by having this IR block filter, it will block off this unnecessary light over here that you're picking up. This stuff is at higher wavelengths and you really can't see it hardly at all anyway because it's so high. But the problem with it is it causes a lot of unnecessary star bloat and it causes your image to be more distorted and more blurry than it otherwise would be. So it's really important to block this mess off, or at least be aware of it. And the reason I suggest this filter is possibly good is when they get down here and talk about DSLR. So when they say this is good for DSLR, it's right because on a DSLR, it has a Bayer film. So there is a film that goes over the chip, and these are like little micro lenses that go over each pixel. And that's how you're able to get a monochrome to give you a color image. That's kind of beyond scope for what I wanted to talk about here. But the point is that for a DSLR, this filter would work because, or another color camera. So like if you have a ZWO camera that's a color camera, that still qualifies for this. And those are going to block the IR and the infrared over here at this right end of the spectrum that we're worried about. So yeah, so this is my last slide, but this is basically wraps my thing. But yeah, so you could really use these for photography or for visual as well. Like I said, I mean, it's the broadband is something that a lot of people have said kind of work because you're letting so much more light through. But anyway, any questions? Was that just too awesomely comprehensive? I don't believe it.
No, Don, it's Michael Borelli. I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever compared the effects of the filters, especially the ones that are meant to knock out light pollution, to the digital light pollution correction that you get, that you can achieve in PixInsight by setting up masks, or very quickly, actually a simple way of doing it is in the Astronomy Tools action set, or also called Neil Carboni's Astronomy Tools. They have a thing that basically does the same thing. It sets up a false flat, works through, and you get some nice results. And I think I've gotten some very similar results compared to that using one of the filters. Have you ever done any work on that?
As far as to my understanding, there was nothing to really help when you have excess light pollution in your images. I mean, I didn't think that, to my knowledge, there's nothing that can really be, I mean, maybe Chris or Danny can speak to it as well, but to my knowledge, when you have extra light pollution that's coming into your sensor like that, it's just, you're just adding extra junk that doesn't belong, and it's really, really hard to remove it. I mean,
Try it. You can get a trial version of the Neil Carboni's action set and try that light pollution correction. It does a heck of a good job.
That's interesting. I've never heard of that. I'm surprised they have that. I mean, now they do have in PixInsight, I know they have something that's the dynamic background extractor, which is supposed to kind of suppress gradients. So what happens is, a lot of times when you have light pollution that's on your images, they're going to manifest as kind of like glows. There's going to be areas that glow more in the image that really should not. And sometimes the glows will change because, if I'm taking a picture at the horizon where the light pollution is bad, then that glow is going to have a certain shape on my image. Well, when I point higher in the sky away from it, the glow is going to change. So it's kind of just adding this horrible mess to your images. So you really have to run this process to kind of help clean that up. But it's, like I said, you're kind of polishing it. I mean, it's the best thing to do is get clean data coming in from the start. And so if you can filter out as much of this as possible before it ever makes it to your image, that's the best thing to do, in my opinion.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I would say both. Do both. Use the filter and use your correction, and I'm sure it'd probably make an improvement maybe.
I have tried both, Neil Cabroni's and the Optilong type thing, and yeah, there's no substitute for actually cutting out the extra light. The Optilong cuts out everything but the nebula. Now, if it's a broadband object, it doesn't matter because, like a galaxy doesn't have a specific set of colors. But Neil Cabroni's some great stuff. I've used it and it works pretty good. It's just you can't push a rope,
That's I'm glad you said that, because that's something I should have mentioned earlier about the narrowband filters. You're only going to be able to get certain wavelengths of light. So what it means is you're only going to be able to get things like bright diffuse nebula, like the Heart and Soul, the California Nebula, Orion Nebula, of course. When it comes to things like the Pleiades, for example, that's a reflection nebula. So your narrowband filters are not going to help you with that because it's just reflected light. So it's not, the reason the narrowband filters work is because it's picking up I guess it's a fluorescence of the material that's in space. Like there's gases that are in space, and a nearby star is like electrifying that gas and making it visible in that wavelength. And so that's what the filter is picking up. So yeah, there's going to be times when some of these filters don't help. I mean, I hear tales that you really should not use narrowband filters on a galaxy, but I mean, I don't see why it would be a problem. I mean, it really also depends on what camera you're pairing it with, because if you're using a color camera with some filter, it's like you're double filtering and you're cutting out more light than you need to. And there's also the Bayer film that I was talking about earlier, because those are like individual red, green, and blue cells. So like some of those are not going to pick up any light at all. So,
by the way, on the Bayer filter, if you don't use an IR cutoff of some sort, you will get pollution in your colors, because the IR doesn't follow the rules of the RGB.
That's weird, because I was, that's what I stood out to me here, though, was they were saying that for DSLR, it's good. The color balance is shifted, but contrast is enhanced. So they really made the only other caution they gave me here on this slide is that for an astro modified camera, it's very good and the color balance is near perfect. So it's like, it
Well,
doesn't seem like it's a problem.
a DSLR camera has a built-in IR block. But unless it's an astro camera, then it doesn't. So
Right.
basically, it probably would be okay for them, but like a ZWO camera that's color, it has no IR block in it. You have to put one in it.
Oh, I know what you know what I'm thinking of. Usually they have an IR window. Like there's like a little window that that separates the chip from the rest of the world, and that little window can be sometimes an IR cut.
Yes, yeah, it can be. I've seen
So
webcams done that
that's
way.
probably how they're doing it. I
So,
see.
This is Chris. Great presentation, and something that a number of us have been looking at lately. Even from the observatory, from RRO, with about a Bortle 4 sky, we still suffer when we're really pushing things from background light pollution. And we've been looking at various options like the L Pro from Optolong and these IDAS filters. I was reading up on this, and it was kind of funny because someone posted in a forum on light pollution filters that the best light pollution filter is gasoline to get you to a darker sky.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're so right. It's unbelievable the difference that light pollution can make. Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I mean, I'm in a Bortle 5, and it was a 4 probably about 4 or 5 years ago. So it's getting worse. It probably is almost ready to be a Bortle 6. It's just getting worse for me all the time here. But yeah, I've actually recently went and shot some Milky Way, and I went to Bortle 2, and that was amazing. But it was just my DSLR on a tripod in the middle of nowhere. But it was awesome because the Milky Way was reflecting off the hood of my car. And I really, in hindsight, I wanted to get a picture of that. I think that's what I'm going to do next time I go is, because you can see the reflection of the Milky Way off the hood of my car. It was just unbelievable.
Where were you at when you were doing that, Don?
This was about an hour south of here. It's in a little town called, oh my gosh, what is it? It's, you're challenging me. It's, is it Preston? I think it's Preston. And it's just a little town that I found. Here's the thing. There is a website that you can use. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not. So lightpollutionmap.info, if you've never seen this.
Yeah, I've been there, yeah.
This is fantastic. And I highly recommend it for anybody, just even visual people. But it kind of shows you where the blobs of light pollution are. I really wish I could get rid of this ad.
Yeah, but you can also pop in your location and it'll zoom in there and tell you what your light pollution is.
Oh, no, yeah, I'm about to get there. So where I actually went, you can see it here. Here's Little Rock area.
Not showing, you have a different screen showing that. We're still seeing your PowerPoint presentation.
Really? I thought I was sharing my entire screen. Hang on a sec.
You have to tell it what app you want to show.
I'm totally locked up here. I'm not sure I'm able to do it, but the website is lightpollutionmap.info. And what you can actually do is click on a target on the map, just click on any spot, and there's a little pop-up window that will appear. And there at the bottom of that little pop-up, it'll tell you what Bortle you are. And so, like, you can put in addresses and things like that. I mean, it's basically like Google Maps with an overlay to show the light pollution bubbles, the colors of how bad it is. But anyway, so I went south of I just went off into a dark blue area where it was Bortle 2. And I just pulled off on the side of the road where nobody would bother me. And I hung out for about an hour and a half shooting off Milky Way pictures. But anyway, that's all I had.
There's a few Bortle ones, but they're pretty far away.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I don't think there's any Bortle zeros.
No, I mean, maybe out in the middle of the ocean somewhere, I guess. But
well, when you get out west, like to Okie-Tex, it's pretty much a zero. but not in Arkansas.
Yeah, there's twos around for sure, and there's places you can go, and boy, I found them. I mean, you really, what I've done is, like I said, I start with lightpollutionmap.info, pick a spot that looks nice and dark where I get a Bortle 2, and then I'll go to Google Maps and actually go to Street View and look around that area so I can see what kind of obstacles are there and where I could possibly park and stuff. And yeah, I'll just do it and make it a road trip.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, no problem.
Catherine wanted to make a short presentation called Minute Astronomy tonight, so I'm going to ask her to do that.
1 minute. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Went to the Boy Scouts and was looking for their astronomy book and found this. And it's really neat. Star chart. You can get it from Chandler, David Chandler Company, and you can Google them. I will send everybody an email about it, but I just thought it was really neat. And it's a two-sided, and that's all I have.
Great. Appreciate it. Yeah. All right. Well, does anybody else have any more business for us to conduct tonight? I really appreciate everybody for this past year and their patience and all the work everybody's done to try to make the club even better. And next year we hope get back to normal and get back out and start showing people the sky at Pinnacle Mountain and Woolly Hollow and other places, and then get back to other events and having maybe some folks come out to RRO to show them the sky. But otherwise, everybody's been a good sport about everything, and we've made it work, and we've continued to provide, I think, service for our members, and we're always interested in hearing back from people what they want out of the club and how we can improve that. So thank you very much for a good year, and next year will be better. Daryl will get off to a good start, I'm sure, and he's been president before and really built the club a lot with his outreach work. So it's going to be a great 2021.